Good morning. They tell a story about a rabbi who was looking for a minyan. He's standing out on the street, stopping people, asking them if they're Jewish and if they can make the minyan. And he stops this one person and says, "Excuse me, sir, are you Jewish?" And he says, "Yes." He says, "Do you mind coming in and helping us make a minyan?" And the man says, "No." He says, "Why not?" He says, "Because I don't believe in organized religion." And the rabbi said, "Tell me, if I was so organized, you think I'd be standing out here looking for a minyan?" Which reminds me of a true story that once happened. A rabbi was talking to a woman and says, "I want to talk to you about Judaism." She said, "I don't practice Judaism." Her name was Sheila. She says, "I practice Sheilaism, because I believe in individuality." The rabbi said, "Well, it's good your name isn't Judy, because if your name was Judy, you'd be celebrating and practicing Judaism." What does Judaism say about individuality versus collective unity? And it's interesting that in this week's Parsha, Yaakov blesses his sons, the 12 tribes of Israel, and he gives each one a unique and distinct blessing. And the question is, why does Judaism have 12 tribes? Shouldn't we be one big tribe? After all, we're one nation, we have one Torah, one God. Why this individuality? And throughout the Torah, even in the book of Deuteronomy, at the very end, Moshe Rabbeinu blesses the 12 tribes, and once again gives each tribe a unique, distinct blessing. And a matter of fact, when they came into the land of Israel under the leadership of Joshua, each tribe had their own territory, their own land. Why are we dividing up the nation into 12 different tribes? Why not bring them together as one cohesive group? And the answer is that there's two types of foods you could eat, soup or salad. What's the difference between a soup and a salad? When you get a soup, sometimes you look at it, it looks like one big bowl of porridge, and you say, "What's in this?" You have no idea what's in this soup, because the individual ingredients all blend together into one soup. Maybe you could distinguish one or two items, but all the other ingredients are lost in the soup. As opposed to a salad where you have many ingredients in the salad, you have onions and cucumbers and peppers and lettuce and tomatoes, but each one remains distinct and unique, and they come together to blend into one salad. And that's what Judaism says. Judaism says we're like a salad, not like a soup. Every person has has his or her uniqueness. Every tribe has its uniqueness. And we shouldn't lose our uniqueness. We should blend together like a salad, not like a soup. Or we could say like a symphony. You don't repeat the same note over and over. Every person plays their note, and together you have a beautiful symphony. As opposed to America, where we talk about the melting pot. The idea of a melting pot is everyone loses their individuality. Says the Torah, no. Every person, every tribe has unique contributions. And that's something we have to learn as a Jewish nation and as a country, that we should respect differences. We should embrace differences. We should actually celebrate differences, because that's what makes us the most beautiful tapestry, the most beautiful symphony. And as a Jewish people, we walk a fine line. It's like a tightrope. On the one hand, we believe in individuality. So much so that our rabbis say that every person should say the whole world was created for me. On the other hand, we believe in community. We need to pray with a minyan, with a quorum, and we always think about community. That's the dance, that's the balance. And sometimes the person says, "Well, I don't want to be bound to the community. I want to do what I want to do." Well, let me ask you a question. If you have a violin which plays the most beautiful music, and one of the strings on the violin says, "I don't want to be tied to the violin, be a slave to the violin. I want to do my own thing," and the string leaves the violin and goes off on its own, it's a useless piece of string. Only when it's bound together with the other strings, tightly wound to the violin, could it produce the most beautiful music. Yes, we are each an individual strand, but we're part of a composition that could create the most beautiful music. And precisely when we're together with others, then we harmonize and bring out our greatest music, our greatest talents. As Rav Shlomo Kalbach once said, when two people talk at the same time, you can't understand either one. But when two people sing together in unity, then you have harmony. I want to just share a story that happened on the last night of Hanukkah, just last week in Israel. It was told over by a former member of Knesset. His name is Mr. Amit Halevi. He and his wife Irit have 3 children. They live in a building in Jerusalem. And it was the last night of Hanukkah. They were about to light the menorah with all 8 candles. And they said, there's this old woman down the hallway who lives alone. Why don't we go invite her in for the last night of Hanukkah? So the whole family went down the hall, knocked on her door. This elderly woman who was an immigrant from Russia. So they said, "Would you like to join us? We're about to light the menorah. We're going to have latkes. We're going to play dreidel. We're going to sing songs. Why don't you join us?" She was delighted. She came into their apartment, lit the menorah with the children. It was beautiful. And then they said, we're embarrassed. We don't really know your name. We see you in the halls. What's your name? She said, oh, my name is Ruth Alexandrovich. Ruth Alexandrovich, they had read about her. She was a famous prisoner of Zion, a refusenik, who in Russia was in the underground movement teaching Jewish children Torah and was arrested by the KGB. And they ransacked her apartment and found Jewish literature and books. And they found a picture of Golda Meir, who was the prime minister at the time. And they said, who is this? She said, it's my grandmother. But they knew better. And they sent her off to hard labor, to forced labor camp for a number of years. She finally managed to be a prisoner of Zion and came home to Eretz Yisrael, made Aliyah, got married. And sadly, her husband passed away and she was living alone. The kids were so inspired as they sat by the menorah and heard her stories of courage, of faith, of determination in Russia to keep the Jewish spirit alive. The next day they went to school. They told their friends and their teachers who their neighbor was. The teacher said, well, let's invite her. And they invited her to the school and she told the whole school her story. And that's the story of the Jewish people. Every person has so much light within them. But we just have to knock on their door and open that door with love, with concern, with care, with unity, and then we draw out the light in every person, and we come together and we become bigger and better as a result. And so Jacob says, let every person remember their story, know who they are, know where they come from. One is a hero in Israel, one is a hero in Russia, one is a hero in the United States. Every Jew plays their part in the symphony, but only when we come together do we create the most beautiful chorus.